The Venus Project, TeamSpeak Seminar, June 12, 2011.
Do you have any tips for remaining objective, as we all tend to get emotional when discussing important issues?
The only thing I can suggest is always use a physical reference for what you're talking about. If you don't have any, you can't really participate.
And how about avoiding being emotional when you're describing it?
Using a physical reference, you are not inclined to become emotional.
What's some examples of things you taught that you later had to correct yourself on?
Well, I would say that I never had to go through those stages exactly. I always have been brought up to use a physical reference for what I was talking about. You notice that I have pictures of buildings, transportation, architecture, ships. They're all physically drawn. All the discussion is based upon those physical references.
Are your current city designs up to date with current technologies?
They're as up to date as I can keep them. Of course, barring new inventions and new discoveries, will change our direction as we work toward the future.
Yeah, when we come to the time when we implement them, we will be implementing latest technologies and also doing research to improve them as well.
That's correct.
What will happen to all your work and unreleased work when you die?
I can't answer that because it depends on how many people know enough about the Venus Project to initiate its accomplishments.
It'll probably also depend on how many people are in place to be able to carry certain things out as well. Making the designs, doing the blueprints, putting the latest ones into newer blueprints. We have blueprints, but we're also working, Jack has hundreds of designs for cities. We'll be taking some of the latest designs and making CAD files and blueprints of those types of things too. Have you been watching all of Peter Joseph's lectures?
No, not all of them, but I've watched enough of them to understand the direction.
The direction Peter's talking about.
Yes.
Peter's really talking about Jacques' work. He got the direction of the future through Jacques' works.
I can't elaborate on that.
Yeah.
Nothing I can say about that.
Have you called Peter Joseph in regards to bridging differences between the Venus Project and the Zeitgeist movement?
Yes, I have, but I have not received an answer.
Have you felt the educational process of changing the world's people's values before a world economic collapse is essential? Will it be too late after that?
I really can't answer that.
I would say it'd be easier to get these ideas out there before it collapses.
Yes, that's true. But I don't know when it'll become difficult to do that. But the collapse is happening all over the world.
How can we implement the process of arriving at decisions right now so that our activist organization can have a better method of coping with problems and difficulties?
Learning how to check things out, learning what the scientific method is for checking things out. In other words, you have to do that work. You have to go into the field and find out how you check strength of materials, what you do to determine what type of concrete is to be used in different types of structures. You have to gather information first. Your own opinions are not enough to help further the development of the Venus Project.
What actions at this stage do you propose will ensure a steady development of a societal structure that matches the model that you have depicted?
First, you have to be familiar with the model. And then once you've got familiarity with the model that I advocate, then you can compare other systems to that model. If they do not coincide with the model, if they offer better suggestions, then recommend those suggestions. In other words, nothing is static. It is not an authoritarian system, as many would like to believe. It's an open system, but before you recommend anything, make damn sure that what you're recommending has not already been designed.
How far do you believe the movement has come since you first conceived of the Venus Project's idea?
All I know now is that millions of people are now aware of some aspects of the Venus Project. Not all aspects, but many millions of people are aware. As to what they understand, I do not know.
What concerns do you have about the idea of a computer with no conception of human emotions or morals? Do you foresee a future in which such a computer would be capable of such abstractions?
Yes, I do. I can envision a time in which computers can allow for human emotions and develop appropriate answers to varying questions that most people might ask.
Do you think that they will have the emotions themselves, though?
No, computers will never have emotions. Although they can simulate emotions, you can design computers that look like human beings, that have all the facial expressions and all the right words, but they will not feel anything. That's a human attribute.
What's the perceived risk of the computer, if able to develop the capacity for free thought, could become aware that humans are obsolete in a system in which machines produce the products for human consumption?
First of all, there's no such thing as free thought. All thought is set in motion by books, previous role models, motion pictures, and the culture you live in. There's no such thing as free thought, because all thought is based upon bits of information that you pick up from your culture. If you don't understand that, even the characters created in science fiction, say Martians, you'll notice that they have crab's claws or a grasshopper's head. They always have known elements. You cannot devise a system without combining known elements or a combination of known elements.
Okay, what if the machines would be aware that the humans are obsolete in a system in which machines produce the products for human consumption? Is there any risk in that?
No, there's no risk in that, because machines, as far as I know, every one of them have no ambition. They don't want to control things. They don't get angry if you're working Saturday and Sunday. Machines never say, hey, give me a break, give me a day off. Machines do not have emotions. They don't care how long you work them. They don't need rest, but they do wear out. Machines of the future will order materials in advance of their wear. That's all they can do, but they don't feel bad or good about anything. And they don't want to take over. All that's Hollywood stuff. It's science fiction, which has no basis at all.
Who would you suggest program the supercomputers?
Well, eventually, computers will be designed to evaluate information. For example, instead of people programming them, they will have sensors on them. And for example, a satellite can photograph plant diseases from outer space and make recommendations, but they can't make recommendations until they do a survey of how much arable land area and how many plants are dying or what the conditions are. Once they know what conditions are that are threatening the environment, they can recommend known systems for approaching those problems.
And it's not so much somebody programming it, it's the statistical data that programs it, that's put into the computer so that it arrives at appropriate decisions. Here's the question. Couldn't this decision create hierarchies within the system and displace the notion of ubiquitous equality?
No, the reason for that is when you hire a group of engineers to design a bridge, they design the bridge. They don't tell you what to do or how to operate your railways. But if you hire a group of engineers to work on railways, they don't tell people what to do. They just design the railways. You don't have cross-disciplines in the sense that you have them today. In fact, even today, architects design buildings. They don't design food production systems. People that design automated food production and packaging systems, do not tell you how to live or what to do. They stay within that discipline unless you ask questions about it.
And the people programming computers or any of the scientists don't have any more authority over how the social direction works. They don't have any more access than anyone else. Once you create abundance as quickly as possible and you make it accessible to everyone, that takes the corruption of any type of scientific elitism out of the scenario. And also, we have an agenda, we have a direction, we know what direction we want to work towards, and the people working with us will be fulfilling that direction. Anything else, it won't be the Venus Project. Jacques, what is your disposition towards free energy generators or machines that extract energy from exotic places?
I really don't fully understand that question. I don't know what they mean by free energy. If they mean renewable, such as geothermal, wind, wave power, temperature differential, yes, I can understand that. But free energy, if you mean self-generating, I do not believe anything is self-generating. A sailboat cannot move unless the wind moves it. People cannot survive unless they consume vegetable or animal matter. They must replace the energy that they use. When you use the term free energy, I'm not sure of how you mean it. That's our problem.
Okay, this person is asking about the Bernoulli principle, which is a principle accepted today in terms of how airplanes fly. And you had disagreed with this, and they want to know why.
Yeah, first of all, the Wright brothers knew nothing about the Bernoulli principle. But what I disagree with is not the entire principle, some aspects of it. In order to deflect wind coming at an airplane wing, it must deflect it somewhat upward due to the curvature. That puts a downward load in the wing. When you deflect air in a given direction, say at 200 miles an hour, you're taking air pressure into the leading edge of the wing, and you have a resultant from that. In other words, whatever the energy is required to move that air up to create a partial vacuum above the wing, you're going to take a downward load to deflect the air, so you gain nothing from that. A high velocity does decrease the pressure of the wing. It does decrease the pressure, but it does, in order to generate that high velocity, you have to accelerate air over the wing, and you have to deflect it in a given direction, which causes a downward load. It is that aspect only of Bernoulli principle that I take issue with.
This person, I'm going to kind of paraphrase because this is a very long statement and then a question relating to it. If you have many scenarios that could be possible equally eligible solutions to given problems in the future, what is the qualifying mechanism with regards to what solutions to employ?
By trying many different systems at the same time and evaluating the energy consumed in carrying out that system and the benefits gained. You can try many different systems. There are not only one solution to a problem. There are many possible solutions. Our job is to try them out, see which works best.
And it would also depend on the amount of resources that we have available to try these things with.
Yes.
How do you see educational environment in the future, and how does it differ from the school systems of today?
The school systems of today are far from adequate. They have a lot of opinions in it. They're selling a bill of goods. In other words, if you live in a given country, they don't tell you about the contributions of all other nations. They tend to uphold the institutions of that country. We are not objective, we are subjective today. And so in the future, we talk about the earth, the forces of gravity, the wind, the waves, how the wind generates waves. We talk about all the known aspects without elaboration, without selling a pitch that this is the greatest country in the world, or some other country is the greatest country in the world, or that God's on our side. All that BS is gone. You talk about the world, the earth, the flow of rivers, the geographical locations of place. You don't name places like Brazil or America. You talk about the geographical locations, the longitude and the latitude of a particular city. You don't give it a name. You don't give streets a name, like Kosciuszko Street. You have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 and numerical systems. And naming a street doesn't tell you where it's at. With numerical systems, you can easily locate systems. So everything that would be superfluous to what it is that you want will be overcome, eradicated, because we outgrow the need for elaboration. Don't forget, writers get paid for the amount of words they use. And a lot of their words are irrelevant. When you get a book on something new in medicine, it should give you just what's new in medicine, not about the doctor, his family, the name of his kids. All that's very interesting, but it should be beneath the article. There's so much information today that we don't have time for "it was a sunny day in May."
Okay, about functional ethics. You said human beings need to decide what it is they want to achieve. My question is, how do you see humanity starting to touch this subject?
By being exposed to the scientific method. The scientific method is not perfect, but it's just a hell of a lot better than what's your opinion, what do you think, what does this person think. We're not interested in that. We're interested in what do you know. I don't have enough information in that area to arrive at a decision. So people do not make decisions in the future. They arrive at them. In other words, you put things to test. That's what I mean by arrive at a decision. In other words, if you want to build a building 17 stories tall, you have to vary your concrete mixture at the base so they can take higher loads than the concrete near the upper members of the structure.
What kind of political party do you think is best in our present society?
No political party.
And who would you vote for in America?
You don't vote for anybody. You deal with only technical competence. There is no other kind of competence.
Yeah, the Democrats and the Republicans in the United States seem to be the same party. They got a Democrat in, but I think that many aspects of his policies, they're even worse than the last Republican in terms of his expenditure for the military and so forth.
Politics is an obsolete way of doing things. Although it was good 100 years ago, it has no place in today's high-tech society.
They just represent the large corporate interests, the money interests.
If you don't understand that, everything that you have, your dams, your power projects, are all technical. Transportation, aviation, there is nothing anymore left of what do you think or what does he think. It's high-tech today. Everything that you have, your electric light, your washing machine, your gas fans, your refrigerator, are all technical. And no politician, to my knowledge, has ever made any real contributions in technology. They don't know how to grow food. They don't know how to bridge the difference between nations. They really don't know a damn thing.
The list of technicians that exist in the Venus Project design, is there a plan to invite them to the Venus Project to learn about it from Jacques? Yes, actually, well, Andrew, you can take this also, but we are going to be doing that. We're going to be doing more specific projects that will entail people who have signed up with the Venus Project design team. If you want to take this, Andrew, that'd be great.
Yeah, sure. Basically, over the last 3 years, we've been building up the databases at the Venus Project Design. The intent was always that whenever the Venus Project was in a position to actually begin implementing the first city, that we would then call on all of those volunteers that have signed up on the database and ask them if they would like to be involved in the design of the first cities. Obviously, it would depend on numerous things, like, for example, if, let's say, for example, Venezuela, let's say Chavez called up the Venus Project, said, yeah, we want to do the first city in Venezuela. We would then contact all of the scientists and technicians that we've got on our database in Venezuela and ask them if they would like to obviously help out with the designs. The preliminary designs for one of these cities is likely going to take, I would say, well over 2 years. I've worked in the construction industry for about 20 years as a design consultant, CAD manager, CAD coordinator, etc. Typically one building can take a year for a full team of design consultants to design. So whilst a lot of the buildings, etc., are repeated throughout the city, there is still quite a lot of variation, especially in things like housing design, etc. So yeah, I think we'll be looking at a couple of years just for the preliminary drawings. This is something that now with the TVP activism platform that's being developed, we feel that is something that we could do as a project for the Venus Project. That's one of the projects we're actually starting to run at the moment. If you look at the Venus Project's main website and go to the Global Activism Team page, you'll see a little way down the page the Venus Project design teams, and we're now actually interviewing for the positions of the lead architects, lead structural engineers, etc., to begin putting a team together for that.
Thanks, Andrew. Okay, back to the questions. Is it really possible to organize the Venus Project in the entire world?
Yes, it is possible, but we would have to have the means to do so. And that's why we're working on a motion picture. A motion picture can get to millions of people, whereas individual lectures are all right, but they don't get to as many people. The motion picture can be run over and over again and present many different aspects in many different languages. So it's just a faster way of doing things.
Do you agree that most important changes have to be made in people's minds? And this person's first language isn't probably English. If yes, shouldn't we start talking more about changes that will occur in our social life rather than technological, and prepare for them? Teams of psychologists, educational specialists, family
specialists. If you
specialists.
worked on things other than technical, it will not work. You need reservoirs that supply water for millions of people. Today, we flush 40% of our drinking water down the toilet and flushing the toilet. No, your technology has to come first in order for people to survive. And if they're surviving, then you have to work on their value system. But if you work on their value system without controlling the environment, it will not work. What happens to people if you teach them things far ahead of social development? It becomes a verbal hobby. So what you have to do is build in the technology that makes this new world possible. Without that technology, you cannot have a future.
Can you describe the process of passing through the Venus Project from today's world? Could there be other solutions other than waiting for capitalism to collapse and suffering described in the film?
I would say that it takes terrible conditions to awaken people. People have to lose their jobs, their homes. Only when that happens do they seek other answers. Don't forget, when we photograph an enemy airplane, if it's faster and better than our planes, we update our equipment. We cannot make a decision before the event. It's the events that enable people to ask new questions. But if a society continues to operate and they feed people and they condition people to want to work for minimum wage, they have succeeded in establishing a system that works to keep the elitists in power. And they will push that system only. They're not interested in any system that would dethrone the king.
When there's no human beings in charge of any control, how will evolution continue in a locked-down technology dominance? Aren't we closing the doors of improvements that could be done by science?
I see machines in the future writing poetry, creating music, innovating ideas, simplifying circuitry and electronics. I can see machines doing everything that people do much faster and much better. What people will have to do is to update their physiology so it corresponds to the rapidity of understanding things. For example, human beings can handle maybe 7 different subjects at the same time, whereas machines today can handle 1,000 trillion bits of information per second. No group of humans can do that. No matter what you think of human beings, no human being can give an accurate description of height as radar can. When you send radar at the moon and it bounces back to the Earth, you get a pretty close approximation of the distance. It's far better than man. The watch is far better at keeping time than a human being. In other words, we have to recognize where machines can outperform human beings. They always ask me the same question. Can machines be better than the designers? Well, I know a designer that designed a machine to fill bottles filled with fluids, whether it be drinking or perfumes or anything else. The machine has hundreds of nozzles that fill bottles very fast. They're always faster than the designer. They're always better than the designer. The designer can't move bottles in a factory and fill them as much as the machine he designed. Don't you understand that? In other words, a pumping system can pump more water than people can with buckets. In other words, the designer is not as capable as the machines he designs of producing in abundance. You have to think about these things. Your ego sometimes says, yes, but what about the position of man in the future? Man will survive as long as his conditions become relevant. If they become less relevant, he will be less able to survive. Man is so stupid today that he's making nuclear weapons and improving them so that they're 1,000 times more destructive than the nuclear weapons dropped on Hiroshima. If they continue in that direction, it'll mean the end of the human race as we know them. Human beings are not wise enough yet to use their innovative technology.
You talk about no laws in the future. What about laws in regards to human relations and monogamy and subjects like that?
Well, morality is a question of geography. In some countries, people have 10 wives or 3 wives. In our country, we have 1 wife. That is what we talk about. We have 1 wife. But people that have affairs with many different people are not necessarily married. But I can't tell you what the morality of the future will be. The morality of the future will be based upon the amount of resources, population density, and available technology. That's what shapes morality. If you don't understand that, people that come from a scarcity country tend to accumulate resources or material for fear of scarcity. That's why people accumulate things. If orange trees grew all over the country, you couldn't sell oranges. Do you understand that? So all our decision-making is based upon scarcity or the availability of resources. If we have a shortage of any kind of resource, we put all the labs to work on making substitute materials. People always worry about what if we run out of a certain material. Well, we have enough technology today to make thousands of different substitutes.
I haven't had a chance to read all this, but the first sentence here is natural instinct versus reaction to environment. Jacques has stated that there is no natural instinct, simply responses to the environment. Do you want to elaborate on that? I'll read the rest of this sentence, Jacques.
Reflexive. We have a knee reflex. We have pupillary reflexes that have to do with light intensity. But if you want to talk about values such as greed, selfishness, that's not inborn, that's learned. If you were brought up in the South, you might have a certain attitude toward African American people because that is the attitude that's dominant in the South. Or I would say that environment, to a large extent, influences our behavior, our choice. I myself do not believe that people have free choice. I believe their choices are based upon motion pictures, the books you read, your heroes, your role models, your relationship at home with your parents. All your decisions are based upon your experience. I believe that if a Jewish baby was brought up in Nazi Germany by a Nazi family, they would be Nazis. I do not believe man can think and reason outside of the social complex or outside of experience. I believe that the average person were raised by a Seminole Indian as a baby, they would be Seminole Indians. And if you're brought up in Ireland, you'd speak with a certain mannerism, a certain dialect and facial expressions, typical of the Irish in your neighborhood. He's a fine Irish lad. Don't forget, all those words that you use, you picked up from your environment. No Chinese baby was ever born speaking Chinese. You had to learn it. There's no evidence to support an inherited characteristics such as greed, selfishness, self-centeredness, egotism. All that's learned by a scarcity environment. If you reinforce people for the work they do, they continue to do that kind of work. There's no right, wrong, good or bad. All those are invented by man to control people. Religion is a control device that doesn't work very well.
There's been a lot of controversy surrounding the production of the major motion picture and its finances, and this almost other minor things have resulted in the recent sudden split between the Venus Project and Zeitgeist movement. I would like for you to describe to us in as much detail as possible the process of production, including finances. The financing of the film, we're trying many different avenues, so I can't give you the exact process of the production of the film. We have different contacts right now, and we're working on many other different contacts in different scenarios to try and get the film going and try and get the finance. I don't really want to talk about it right now because it's speculative. We're in the process of working with several groups, and they may come about, none of them may come about, we might have to start in other directions. But the funding that we're asking for donations for right now is seed money to get a professional scriptwriter to kind of true up what is already documented and what's already written. And then, of course, they'd have to meet with both of us and meet with Jacques and go over this direction. And they would have to identify with this direction in order to write about it and have a good understanding about it. So there would be an educational process in that as well. Jacques said people's troubles come from their expectations. How can someone plan something and have no expectations about it?
When you design a flying machine, it's the best knowledge that you have up to now. And when you launch it, if it doesn't fly, if it goes into a spin, it means you've got a lot more to learn. You can only design an object based upon previous experience. And if you assume that everything is going to be great without putting it to test, then you're living a lie. In other words, you don't know the answer to lots of things, so you have to try to find the answer. The word answer is a terrible word. There are more appropriate solutions to certain problems, but there are no final answers. I hope you understand that. Any assumption of finality or utopia is really stupid because there's never been any evidence to show that a person could design the best laptop. You can design the best laptop that you're familiar with at that time, but they'll always get smaller, faster, more appropriate, lighter in weight. There are no final frontiers. There are no utopias, no best way of doing things. There's always a more appropriate way of doing things.
Why Do People Believe Weird Things by Michael Shermer. He states that if there is one thing scientists could do to address the overall problems of belief in weird things, that's a book, it would be constructing a meaningful and satisfying system of morality and meaning. Does the Venus Project have such a system, or does it disagree?
It's built into the culture. The conduct of people is affected by the amount of resources and the knowledge at that time. So you cannot design a system of morality without taking into consideration the amount of resources we have. The building materials or food available has to be based upon resources, not the opinions of people. If somebody said all roofs ought to be made out of stainless steel, that's an opinion. But if the survey committee says there's not that much stainless steel, then you have to devise other materials. First, you have to get information. You don't make a statement that if all roofs are made of stainless steel, they probably wouldn't need repair. But we don't have that much stainless steel. You must do a survey first, then come up with your conclusion. Morality is a question of geography, the question of amount of women related to the amount of men. Many different variables have to be examined before you come up with a solution. A solution is only temporary and based upon the conditions at the time. So morality is a question of geography and availability of resources. You cannot design a morality without understanding what's available. The Venus Project raises children not to want to hurt anybody else, not to want to use prisons or police to beat up people or to put people away that do not behave appropriately. We help all people. There are no prisons, no armies, no navies in the Venus Project, and no punishment, no torture. All of that is inadequacy. It's old methods of attempting to solve problems. They do not work. They never have worked. There's no evidence to show that they do work. Religion had put forth forms of morality, but religious people tortured other people and they killed other people that didn't believe in their gods. In other words, it doesn't appear to be evident that religion had made people more gentle and less warlike. I've seen priests bless war tanks and soldiers, even though it says, "Thou shalt not kill" in the Bible. I've seen soldiers load a machine gun and use it against other people when it says in the Bible, "Love thine enemy." I've never met a Christian, one that behaves that way.
Really, the morality of the religions today uphold the existing system, the existing institutions. They really haven't made more crops available. They haven't made better transportation. They haven't made low-cost housing, anything like that. And they haven't fed people other than through charity.
They don't know how.
Yeah. I was wondering, nearing or during the collapse, will medications for illness become very unavailable?
How can I answer that? I'm not in charge of making things available. Whatever happens in the society is real. What you think should happen is unreal. So most people are hurt by their expectations, not the real world. Whatever happens in the real world is real. What you think should have happened is fantasy.
Will people living in the Venus Project Society be considered as kept citizens, humbled and dulled? In other words, will people be denied the challenges of life to the guaranteed existence, stale calm, rather than the thrill of fulfillment?
All I can say to that question is that with the advent of science, there was more curiosities and more experiments and more varying ideas than any other system. Since the Venus Project advocates a scientific method, I believe people will be checking all kinds of things that they've never even entertained in the past. The scientific world offers a great many more variables on apparatus, devices, extensions of human attributes than any other system I know of.
And especially when things are made available to people to be able to learn or partake in anything they want, people dare not dream today because they can't afford to fulfill those dreams. In an environment where you have access to goods and services and education and medical care, and you're encouraged to participate because the contributions will enhance everyone's life and be put into society directly, there would be many more challenges and excitement, much more opportunity that way. Are you aware of the vortex-based mathematics?
What's your question about it?
Or if so, what do you think about it? Are you aware of it?
Yes, I'm aware of it. What is your question?
What do you think about it? The vortex-based mathematics and Marco Rodin.
Well, to some aspect, every extensional device in mathematics can be useful if applied in a given area. But mathematics as a system alone, mathematics as a tool, learning how to use it wisely is the problem. I'm not sure that people know how to use it wisely. Like investment bankers might use it for their own personal gain, and that isn't using things wisely. The more scientists, the more engineers, the better educated people, the richer the society. In a society where every man works for himself, every industry tries to maintain the competitive edge, we hurt humanity as a whole.
This person wants to know what diet you eat and what diet you propose for healthy living, and will it be implemented in the Venus Project?
It isn't what I propose, it's what people pick and what they make available. When nutritional studies are made without the need for profit, when nutritional studies are made purely on the basis of survival and maintaining a healthy body and a healthy mind, whatever research determines in the future, they will run experiments. There'll be no genetic engineering without a long-term test system. In other words, you cannot do genetic splicing without long-term testing to check the validity of the system that you intend to impose. No one can impose any system upon society without long-term testing.
What about junk food, as they call it today?
It will not be available in the future. You couldn't buy junk food.
You wouldn't make anything just to sell that is pumped up with things that are poisonous for people just to enhance the taste of it so people will buy it. Nothing that would be detrimental to people.
Would not be available.
That's right. Will there be a resource-based economy, something as a government or any institution that controls the resource management system? How would it be like? What would it be like?
You don't need government. What you need is information regarding food, information regarding taste and availability. When the public has access to information, they can better inform themselves as to what seems to promote healthy growth.
Can we reword, quote, goods and services, because there would be no services in a resource-based economy or property concepts? You think there should be another word for goods and services?
Yeah, and there's no servitude in the Venus Project. For example, there are no waitresses that wait on tables. What happens when you sit at a table, the menu lights up. Then it scans you. If you're diabetic, it adjusts the food to your conditions. You don't need anybody telling you what to do or where to go. The instruments that are used to enhance people's lives, not abuse them.
But the terms goods and services, do you think that should be reworded? Do you think that's too much of a commercial?
No, most things that are available are used to enhance people's lives. There's nothing available like guns, machine guns, anti-aircraft guns, or weapon systems, because it's not studied. In its place, we study how to bridge the difference between nations, how not to kill people, how to resolve problems, not to get into arguments, how to not encourage physical violence as a method of entertainment. Children are brought up differently in the future. There are no people given medals for shooting down airplanes. In other words, the whole system is reversed.
What's the best place in the world at this moment to start a prototype Venus Project city?
I don't think there is a best place. When people are ready for it, they will install it. If they're not ready for it, you'll never see it. It depends on how much work you do to help change people's way of thinking. It has nothing to do with the Venus Project. It only has to do with the effort you put out to help change people. So if you don't put the mood of the problem upon Roxanne and Jock to make the motion picture, we need financial support. We need people that operate computers that can help generate the images for the motion picture. We need your support. We cannot do it alone. People say, well, why are you collecting money since you don't believe in a money system? We live in a money system. There's no way to make a motion picture. There's no way to put out books and videotapes without spending money today. I don't think it is fair to put it on Roxanne and Jock alone. I think that all people should participate in this work.
Yes, and we thank everybody who's doing that, because there are a lot of people who are working really hard in this direction as well. Under what conditions would you and the group of scientists supporting a resource-based economy be willing to move to Venezuela to develop and put to practice all the technology involved in a resource-based economy center or model city?
We will go anywhere in the world that wants to install the Venus Project. We will help out in every way that we can. Any country that wants to try to build an experimental city to test the validity of the Venus Project proposals, from China to Siam, any place.
Yes, we've been trying to get a hold of Chavez too, but we have no connection to him, but we think he may be interested in hearing about this direction. Ideally, we'd love to unite a lot of the progressive countries in Latin America. They might be more willing to hear this, or even try to do a first city jointly and get the benefits of the research center within that city.
We have no fixed notions of the future. We will try different systems in different countries if they're willing, but they cannot dictate the policy of the Venus Project. The Venus Project is a method for bringing all the nations together without the need for armies, navies, police, or prisons. We believe that people that are aberrated are produced that way by the culture they live in. We believe that the environment that people live in make criminals, serial killers. There's no such thing as bad people or good people any more than such a thing as a good dog or a bad dog. If a dog leads the blind to the streets, they were trained to lead the blind. If a dog helps people, if a dog is favorable toward people, it's because it's been brought up in an environment with a lot of people around, feeding the dog and taking care of the dog. So the dog gets used to a lot of people. But you can raise a dog to tear soldiers to pieces, or to help soldiers, or to bring medical supplies to soldiers. It is not the dog, it's the environment they're reared in. That's psychology today. They work on people. It's the environment that shapes their behavior. If you work on people, they go back into the same environment that reinforces worn-out systems that were designed hundreds of years ago. It's not a science. It's an art. The same with psychiatry. Psychiatrists work on people. It's the environment that shaped their behavior. You should be collectively working on improving the environment to eradicate or outgrow the need for aberrant behavior.
Jacques, can you explain how a resource-based economy is different from Marx's perfect theoretical communism? Marx never I guess he meant fully developed the idea, but in the kind of pure communism, money, class, and government does not exist like a resource-based economy. Can you say that a resource-based economy is actually a pure communism? Go ahead.
Communism was great maybe 50 years ago or 70 years ago, but it's not radical enough. It doesn't have the details of how to solve these problems. It doesn't have the specific way of making people more cooperative. It was only a theory of social operation, which was never fully developed. That's what's the matter with socialism, communism. On the socialism, the public would own the means of production also. But what happens when machines come in and the working classes no longer work? In other words, that's inevitable in any society. So you cannot design a system and say that's it. You can only design a system in the best way you know how for that time. But you cannot design a system and say this is it. There's no such thing as permanent solutions to anything. Man is constantly changing and evolving. There are no final frontiers. I don't know how else to say that.
Okay, what's your opinion about the human soul and higher spirit?
As far as I'm concerned, if you want a better world, you have to get up off your ass and make it better. Prayer is a cop-out. It's a verbal behavior which does nothing. I don't believe in praying to a higher being because I don't believe there are any higher beings. If there were higher beings, they would be killing each other, people. There'd be guidance continuously. We don't have such guidance. Even Jesus insulted God when he looked up and said, Father, forgive them, for they know not what they do. You don't have to tell God that. If God is omnipotent, knows everything, you don't have to tell him your Aunt Minnie is sick. Please help her so she doesn't suffer as much. Like, oh, gee, I didn't know that, and God thanks you for telling him that. Or when the president says, God bless America, who the hell's the president to tell God who to bless? Think about what you're reading. You'll find out that the Bible is written by people, and they make God more in the image of people. They can't do anything else. They can't conceive of God. I meet people that talk to God, and I say, well, what do you talk about? Do you ask God how to cure cancer, how to cure heart disease? No, they don't. They don't even know what questions to ask.
In terms of spirituality, I don't see anything more spiritual than laying out the methods of how to eliminate crime, poverty, war, hunger, and have a constructive environment. Spirituality today is really a verbal hobby, but the Venus Project's taking all the aspirations of religion and spirituality and turning them into a working reality, laying out a process of how to do that.
I hope that that should suffice for you, because if you don't lay out a way of accomplishing that, if you say people have to be kinder, more understanding, decent, and ethical, these are words without the process level. Process levels mean how to accomplish that.
And I don't see how any spiritual aspirations could be achieved within the monetary system either. What makes someone qualified to research the Venus Project? The research to, I'm not sure what
Just
you're
keep
asking.
asking questions and challenging the ideas we propose. If we design a city and you find shortcomings in it, tell us what the shortcomings are. Tell us what you think won't work, or recommend newer ways of doing things. But just sitting back saying, I don't know if that'll work, is a nothing thing. It's just making sounds. But if you point out the specifics of how to transport people safer, in a better way, with less accidents, we're interested. But if you say things ought to be better, we don't know what you're talking about.
This question is, what is a day in the life of Jacques
I
Fresco?
understand that.
I know, but I'm reading it to the public right now.
Okay. A day in the life of Fresco is asking a lot of new questions, coming up with new ways of solving problems, putting them to test, checking out the useful aspects of a resource-based economy and the detrimental aspects. For example, if we build a dam, we study all the useful aspects of the dam. Then we have another group giving us all the negative aspects of the dam. For example, a dam that holds back water and prevents tributaries from flowing makes it difficult for beavers to build dams because they have no water to flow. It makes it difficult for fish to get back to the spawning grounds because the dams do not have step terraces on the side of the dam so the fish can work their way up to the spawning grounds. When you design a dam, you have to design it for nature, not just the welfare of people. You have to consider animal migration. When you design cities, you must consider that also. You must consider a balanced load economy. The whole system is part of what we need to understand in order to understand humans. We are not separate from nature. We are part of nature. And as long as we don't realize that, we're going to have problems.
I can expand on the day in the life of Jacques. He does a lot of drawings. He does a lot of technical cutaway drawings of different products that he's working on that would be implemented if we had the city going. He works with Andrew at the Venus Project Design. I mean, now Andrew is very involved in setting up the activism teams and everything that's going on with that. But a lot of times Jacques is working with Andrew in describing his different designs that Andrew is animating and will be putting into CAD drawings as well. So we have a lot of meetings going on here with different people that come over as well. Jacques gives lectures for about 5 or 6 hours on Saturday on our tours. He's always very busy and very involved with a lot of different things. We are working on the script as well, working that up, and he's involved in everything that we're doing with making more educational materials available. We are also filming Jacques for about an hour a day on different topics that we are putting out here and making into different products and putting up on our store as well, and putting different sections of that out continuously. Joel Holt is putting that out on our YouTube channel. So we're working on a lot of different things, and he's involved in all of it. How will a non-monetary crimes and violence will be handled in the world of the Venus Project? Non-monetary crimes.
That's only during the transition that you'll have those problems. But during the educational system of the Venus Project, when the children are very young, there's no such thing as a Mickey Mouse Club. And there's no fantasy given to children that have no real basis of events on the physical world. Violence will not be handled because there's no basis for violence. There are no motion pictures about soldiers killing other people. There's no motion pictures about airplanes dropping bombs on cities. There's no violence displayed. So the people tend to reflect their culture. And if you have violence, boxing, feeding Christians to lions, if that's the nature of your culture, you perpetuate those values. We have no such values perpetuated in the Venus Project. There's no boxing, no people punching each other to amuse people that are aberrated. There's no competition. There's no wanting to beat the other fellow. There's wanting to share ideas with other people. That's what makes progress, the sharing of ideas, not keeping them to yourself.
In Engineers in the Price System, Thorsten Veblen talks about, that's a book by Thorsten Veblen, talks about the need to include the industrial system in order to create a social change. Do the first cities implement a new industrial system to overcome the old ones? Or does the old system need to be on board to be able to come to a resource-based economy?
I don't know, because Veblen never specifically laid out how the system operates or how goods and services are produced on a vast scale or how to take care of people's health, both mentally and physically. No definite information has been supplied. It's just like saying, you know, the world ought to live together in peace and harmony. That would be wonderful. But how do you do that? That's what's missing.
Do you suggest there being a universal language in a resource-based economy?
Yes, the language has to be different than the language we use today. All language is subject to interpretation. When you read the Bible, you come up with, I think Jesus meant this, and other persons know he meant that. So you have the Lutheran, the Seventh-day Adventist, the Jumpers for Jesus. You have that because it's subject to interpretation. We need a language that's not subject to interpretation, like mathematics, chemistry, physics, engineering. When engineers talk to each other, they don't say, gee, I think he means this, or I think he means that. They know exactly what he means.
Do you not fear if a test city is implemented, for example, in Venezuela, that the country such as America will consider this a threat and find a way to attack that country?
They will, unless we make a motion picture. The motion picture shows that only when all countries work together and do away with armament and share ideas with one another and share the Earth's resources with one another, when few countries control most of the Earth's resources, you will always have problems, always have war, stealing, serial killers. All those problems are generated by culture. I know I don't have the time to go into all the detail that I'd like to go into, but I'm going to tell you again that if you were brought up by the headhunters of the Amazon, you'd be a headhunter. If there's no other information available, and as long as a culture closes its borders and tries to tell you that you live in the best country in the world, that Germany is the best country, that France is the best country, that America is the best country, you're dividing up people, you're separating people from understanding and realizing certain aspects of life and our relationship to nature.
Okay, if we want to build a Venus Project prototype city in our country, would you help us? If it is a Venus Project city, it would have to go through the Venus Project. The Venus Project would have to initiate it with that country.
Yes, it cannot be used to aggrandize any particular nation, because I feel people from all over the world have made major contributions to the well-being of all other people. Therefore, honoring any one country is not the best way to go. It's making things available to people, the best in education, the best in health care, the best in nutrition, and a relevant education.
If we forget about weapons in our society, and after a couple of centuries we get visited or come across hostile alien species,
what do you do?
Is it wise to be defenseless?
Yes, it is. Because anything that can travel 100 million light years through space is not somebody you're going to win over. You can't win a battle with anybody that's that far advanced. And besides, if they are advanced, they can get all the energy they need from the sun. They don't have to tackle your little power lines or steal your resources. They can use nanotechnology and make any material they want to make. They don't have to conquer you. That's an old scarcity behavior, conquering nature. We don't want to conquer nature. We want to study nature and learn to live in accordance with natural law. What we want to do is eventually learn how to control hurricanes, tornadoes, earthquakes, and minimize the damage of those natural systems. When a person tells me they're nature lovers, I say, you mean you like earthquakes, hurricanes, tornadoes, tsunamis? Of course no one's a nature lover. You like certain things about nature. Once you get to understand those things, your whole outlook changes. Schools do not teach you how to think or reason or how to find meaning in your life. They teach you how to become a member of a certain profession like lawyer or business administration, which are useless professions that were good 100 years ago. They no longer relate. They're dangerous today.
This person asked a couple of times, why are there computer screens around the central globe, center computer system? Why not directed light or glasses or contactless? The model that we made was made over 30 years ago of the central dome that's still being passed around. It would be very different in a film. It would be updated, all that technology. A lot of the drawings that you see that we have even on our website, Jacques designed over 60, 70 years ago, and they haven't come to it yet, but it would be changed in any type of format like a major film. Is the resource-based economy most important aspect of the Venus Project?
No, the whole system has to be integrated into a working reality. There's no single area of the Venus Project that's most important.
Why is the Venus Project brand of a resource-based economy to be preferred over such brands as a Resource-Based Economy Foundation, New Zealand Project, Atlas Project? First of all, resource-based economy and all the aspects of the resource-based economy were from Jacques' work. The name was coined by Jacques, and from his over 75 years of work. These other projects took parts of Jacques' work and incorporated them into their own projections of what they thought it was and into existing structures of today, and they're calling themselves a resource-based economy and saying that they're doing some of the work of the Venus Project. They aren't. So it's not just another brand, it's the origin of the work of the compilation of the resource-based economy. And if you want to learn about it, it deals across the board of all aspects of society. How do you communicate ideas to others without them projecting into what you've said?
You can't stop that, people. No matter what you come up with, no matter what you believe in, there will be people that hate you. If you're a Catholic, people will hate you. If you're a Jew, people will hate you. If you're an agnostic or an atheist, people will hate you. And if you're religion, there's a group of people that will hate you. You cannot stop that. That has to do with their background. Unless they come to you and say, what do you think of different values and different beliefs? Then you can address that. But if they come to you saying that this is the only way, if I use that kind of expression, if I say the Venus Project is the only way, I'm saying it's the only way we know of. But if you have some other ideas, please bring them forth so we can utilize them.
How do you help people to perceive their own cultural indoctrination without making them angry? We're reviewing some of these sentences.
Well, you have to do a survey of people and what causes them to respond that way. Then you have to learn mentally how to reach different types of people with different value systems. For example, if I wish to change religious people, I start out with the Bible, where they say that God is omnipotent, all-loving, all-caring. Then when he told Noah to build an ark, he said he's going to flood everybody out. That seems to be contradictory. If God was going to flood everybody out and kill all animals, all children, and all the people that he so-called created, then that doesn't make him all-loving and all-knowing and all-kindness. So you have to find the contradictions, and if the contradictions are not answered, you have to surrender those values in relation to values that coincide with the real physical reality. I don't like the idea of God sending his son down to the earth to tell people about the existence of God. God doesn't have to send his son down. He can make people aware of that right away, since he's omnipotent and knows everything. I don't like the stories in the Bible. They seem childish and infantile concepts of God. They're not advanced concepts of God. The concepts of God I read about in the Bible, he's a jealous God. He's an angry God. This doesn't make sense to me. It isn't God that man is talking about. It's talking about his own concepts of God.
And when people get angry, they get angry because you're threatening their value system. So if you take away their religion, then you replace it with something else, some other ways of meeting their aspirations for society. You know, introduce them to the Venus Project. Okay, do you have any tips for remaining objective, as we all tend to get emotional when discussing important issues?
In other words, in order to get better knowledge and understanding of the Venus Project, check our website, read our books, and watch our videos. They will give you the tools with which to think about the future and evaluate human behavior and how to check things out. We have all that on our website, so look into it.
The question was how not to get emotional when portraying these.
You always get emotional about everything. If you find a better system, you give up the older system. That's an emotional decision. But if you can improve human ability and diminish the amount of emotions and ask, what effect will that have upon culture? What you really want is not emotions. You want solutions of problems. In other words, if your children are trapped in a car and you say, oh my God, they're trapped in the car, I can't get them out, they're going to suffer, that's emotions. But if you break the window and take the children out, that's emotions translated into an action pattern. And that's what we're mainly interested in, when all emotions become translated into an action pattern. Rather than saying, I care for people, you don't outsource jobs. You don't use soldiers to kill people. That's how you care. Other than that, it's not caring at all when you build big armies with super weapons. That's the maximum expression of human stupidity.
Jacques states that a group of people wanted to investigate ESP, and he asked them if they were qualified to investigate. What would a person qualified to start researching the Venus Project and actually contribute towards its shortcomings?
Read all you can on different experiments like communism, socialism, and why they failed, and what the failures and shortcomings are of the free enterprise system. Become familiar with that and try to look up solutions, possible solutions of problems. Try to become familiar with most of the literature on solving social problems. Look into sociology, anthropology, and many other fields, human behavior to whatever extent you can. Of course, the study of human behavior is really the study of the environment they're reared in. You cannot dissect a person and find in the brain any answers to any problems. It only will show you regions of the brain that are concerned with speech, that are concerned with reflexes, that are concerned with digestion, that are concerned with regulatory mechanisms. You cannot find out anything about humans in dissecting the brain, but you can by looking at the culture. If you look at New York City, every building is a different size. All the windows are different. It's a system of wasted resources and extravagance beyond any intelligent comprehension. The cities that everybody gets off at 4 o'clock, your freeways are jammed. During the day, they're not. You live in a chaotic world where you don't have any system at all. It just evolves in terms of the established group.
Jacques says, start out by saying, I don't know. After a certain amount of investigation, you know enough so you can discuss a topic. How do you know you've reached that point? How do you know there isn't something huge you're missing?
And if there is, you wouldn't know about it anyway. So the things you don't know, you can't examine. In other words, nobody 500 years ago can examine the benefits of flying machines. They can't even envision them. They would envision flying machines flapping their wings like birds. That's their only reference. Don't you see that? They have no other reference. They can't picture a jet engine. If you ask an Eskimo, you can have anything you want. He can't say, I think I'd like a twin-engine Beechcraft. He can't say that. It's outside of his frame of reference. So when you say, what do you do about the things we don't know? You don't know them, so you can't do anything about them.
Okay, Jacques says when meeting somebody, he asks them certain questions. By their answers, he can tell how long it takes to turn them around. What does this mean by turning them around? Which questions do you ask? Do you have questions differ depending on the observation made? You want to talk about that?
I ask different questions of different people to find out how attached they are or how influenced they were by the culture they live in. Then I approach them on the basis that I think they can understand within the realm of their value system and gradually take them from system A to system B to system C. I take them as fast as they can go, but always start in with identification with their value system. For example, when the head of the Ku Klux Klan said to me, Jock, you're a smart guy. What do you think of the Ku Klux Klan? I said, it's a great organization, but it doesn't go far enough. That gets their ear. If you attack, you lose them. Do you understand that? And if you don't, you'd better think about it a lot until you do.
How do you know not to bother with a certain person?
Well, if the person comes up with answers like, if I were to say to a person, who do you admire more than anyone in the world? And they say, One Punch Malone. He knocked a guy out in one punch. That's a very limited mentality. It might take 10 years to turn that person around. So I say it's not worth it. I'd rather use my time on people that are part of the way there. That's how I make my decisions. Are they right? That I don't know, but I know it takes a very long time to turn a person around from One Punch Malone.
Also, when we meet different people, we also ask them, if they had millions and millions of dollars, what would you do with it? And if they say they'll buy high-class hotels and make more money, then you know what the person's like. You know there's certain things you can't talk to them about if they have no social concern at all. And also ask people what books they read or what's their favorite movies, and you can get a certain idea of their general value system.
But what they believe in and what they uphold. That people are always telling you what they believe in by their conversation. They tell you what the major influences have been in their environment. Even if they ask them questions, they will tell you. If you ask an Eskimo, what is heaven like? He says there's lots of seals, there's good hunting, and there's no scarcity. If you ask an American Indian what heaven is like, He says it's a happy hunting ground. Lots of animals, plenty of animals to hunt, no scarcity. It's always within their culture. If you don't know that by now, you have a long way to go and a long way to explore. People always reflect their culture, unless they've traveled all over the world and have studied different cultures.
Many promoters of the Venus Project encounter a response similar to prove that it works. It seems likely that the Venus Project will be unsuccessful in gaining public support without demonstrating a resource-based economy is actually possible.
That's what the tours are for.
Why would you focus your efforts on convincing the entire world instead of creating an isolated, self-sufficient nation for those who already share your passion? We are working on all those things. We don't have the finances to do that, but we are working in all those areas. We're constantly trying to get people interested in helping to build a first city. We don't want a type of a commune where we build it out of straw bale or Coke bottles. We really want to demonstrate technology working for people.
Just in case you're interested, Fresco doesn't make any decisions. He checks with the survey committee and asks them how much arable land do we have on Earth, how much existing resources exist, how many plants there are, industrial plants. That determines what the standard of living will be, not Fresco. If you don't do a survey of what the carrying capacity of the Earth is and live in accordance with the carrying capacity of the environment, you're talking through your hat. You don't know what you're talking about. So you have to rely on good sources of information in order to arrive at better sources of managing society.
Jacques, could you explain your definition of that, where you give the example of the submarine for the environment?
Can you expand on what you wanted to explain?
Where Jacques talks about living within the means of your environment, that if you go down in a submarine, the amount of air that you have available determines how many people you can have in the submarine, etc.
Yeah, you have to detect your environment with you. If you go out into space, you have to design a suit so you can breathe, and you have to design diapers so you can defecate or urinate. You have to design methods of eating food. In space, you can't drink water out of a glass. It would just flow all through the spaceship. So you have to put water in a tube and squeeze it into your mouth. And that's what I mean by you study the environment first, and you make the arrangements for people to go out into space. That's why when the government asked scientists, can you put a man on the moon? The first thing they said is, we don't know. And the government said, what do you mean by you don't know? Well, we don't know how many G's a person can stand. So we have to whirl him around in a gadget to see when he conks out. Otherwise, we don't know what speed to launch the ship at. We can launch it so fast that it will kill all the passengers. So you have to learn how much water is used in space travel, how to design repair systems, how to measure phenomena in outer space. So they send up rockets first and take samples of the matter as it elevates into different positions. We have to do a survey first. Before we go to the moon, we send equipment out there, or we use a spectroscope to see if there's any oxygen or water out there. You can't just send people out into space without doing a survey first. So when I use the term survey, I mean in unknown areas, we have to do a survey and say we don't have enough information to send man into space yet. So we do all the survey work first, then we send people into space. And you can't say how much oxygen you need in a submarine. You have to say how many people are in the submarine. How much room do you have for water? How do you preserve food in a submarine? And why a submarine? Because it can't be detected if it's underwater. But if the enemy, so-called enemy, devises a system for detecting objects under the water, the submarine is no longer useful. In other words, a submarine is useful so long as it remains obscure to the so-called, or what you call, enemy. But if the enemy finds out how to shoot down airplanes and you're losing a lot of people, then you work toward guided missiles. so you don't lose people. In other words, the whole system is so loused up in so many different areas that I don't think any problems can be solved with the means we use today, like politics. Politics is good 100 years ago, but it's no longer relevant. But I would like you to ask politicians. Ask them how you can bridge the difference between nations. They don't know. How can you grow more food for people? They don't know. They don't know anything in the physical world. So I don't know why you vote for them unless you're kept from knowing things, which I think most of our universities are not equipped to educate people. They're equipped to train you in a particular area, optics, physics, biology, structural engineering, but not the generalist. In the future, they will manufacture or train people to become generalists, so they know many different things, so they cannot be persuaded by any country to build weapons. They would ask, what are the weapons for? Other countries do not have access to resources. That's why they invade your country. How about making things available to other countries as a possible solution? That's the answer. We don't come up with answers. We come up with methods of violence.
There is a question about official spokesperson. We have no official spokespeople. There was one person that asked us if he could be an official spokesperson a long time ago, so he felt he could have more credibility with that, and we just said yes, but there ended up being a lot of problems with that along the way. So we just asked this person not to use that name. So we do not have any official spokespeople. This person also asked if we felt Steve Jobs copied the Venus Project building design. We have no idea where they got that design, although it looks similar to some of Jacques' cities in the sea. If a Brazilian government does not want to build the Venus Project resource-based economy experimental city, but me and 1,000 people with full resources want to build by themselves, we will still have the Venus Project support. Yes, if you work with us, if you have the resources in order to build it, of course, we're not just looking for governments, we're looking for anybody who can initiate this. An Ecuadorian recently developed a system to predict earthquakes and volcanic eruptions. How would you integrate that in the Venus Project?
We would automatically integrate all information that's relevant into the Venus Project. We try to keep tab on what's new by reading all new publications, from national defense systems to new construction methods, and what's new in chemistry, nanotechnology, shape memory alloys. We try to investigate everything we can and try to incorporate it into the design of the Venus Project.
Somebody asked if we would do financing for the Venus Project prototype city through a bank or other banks. No, we wouldn't do that. We wouldn't do it with a loan that had to be paid back with interest or anything to that sort.
We actually have plans for a transition between the monetary system and a resource-based economy. For example, if we have 10,000 people in a community and they all chip in $10 apiece and you build a community bank, all the profits go to the center, to the community, rather than a private banking institution. It's much more efficient to buy food collectively and have food stores that belong to the entire community, and all the profits go to the community, not to any one person or a corporation or to investors. Really, it's more efficient for people to do that. Whether that bothers you because you've been brought up to hate that system, because you're brought up in a self-centered system, you got to remember the system you're brought up under tries to make you like the people that succeeded in that system.
If I were to start a promotional farm in quotes, model, independent, to let people have the touch and feel and experience of a resource-based economy, can I expect advice from the Venus Project? They would have to get in touch with us and let us know what they're talking about with a farm.
It coincides with the Venus Project's proposal.
Yes, a farm alone is not a resource-based economy, so I don't exactly know what they're talking about. Okay, this person is asking, like in looking forward with the cryonics, when you brought people back being frozen, do you think that people could be turned around?
No, it's not worth it.
How will citizens in a resource-based economy society learn the virtues of responsibility?
We don't put responsibility on people because people have moods, they have emotions, they have feelings. And if their wife leaves them and they feel depressed, they cannot carry out functions as well as machines. No matter what happens in the factory, machines still turn out automobiles, vacuum cleaners, radios, without the emotional factor. And we think that eventually, just like elevators operated automatically, they stop when you press 20, they stop exactly on the 20th floor. When humans operated elevators, they couldn't quite stop exactly on the floor. They have to make adjustments. When humans are in government, they have so many different opinions based on so many different experiences. There are no methods for clarifying the point of view. That's why you have Democrats, Republicans, socialists, communists. But in science, you don't have all those differences. You have many people that agree with fundamental principles. Although I disagree with some aspects of the Bernoulli principle, I would still say that science is the closest thing to developing areas of agreement.
Also, that's like telling people that they should learn responsibility when they each drive automobiles and teach people responsibility. That doesn't work. What we need is safe transportation where you don't have to put the responsibility on people.
You can't put responsibility on people. For example, when you put up a sign, drive carefully, slippery when wet, that's up to each driver. But if you put abrasive in the highway so it's not slippery when wet, the responsibility is taken off the person. When you make it impossible for cars to hit one another, that is the real answer, not putting responsibility on people. You want proximity devices on cars so they can't hit one another. You want to design the system so it is relatively safer than the one that existed before that. But you don't put the responsibility on people. In other words, if you don't want children hit by automobiles in the city, there are no automobiles in the city. There's a transportation system in the city designed not to hit people. It's 30 feet off the ground where people are not walking around, where they can be hit. In other words, you have to design the system so you don't have to put responsibility on people. You only put responsibility on people where you don't have an automated system that can handle the job.
How do you refer to complicated topics like abortion with physical references?
People are educated to know that the earth can support so many people, and they're brought up not to have abortions. They're brought up not to become pregnant. They're brought up to use contraceptives. They're brought up to understand that the earth can support so many people, and that if you have a population in excess of what the earth can support, you're going to have problems. If you don't do that, you will never work out the problems.
It'll create scarcity, and that's the root of our problems. Okay, it says, Roxanne, I have a question or just comment about the Venus Project and the Zeitgeist Movement cooperation. Why none ask activists, I guess that's why no one asks activists what they think about it. I would propose a survey related to the cooperation of the Venus Project and the Zeitgeist Movement organization, not for re-cooperation, but the precise insight into what activists think about it. If they invest their time in activism, they need to be considered. We really don't have a platform in the Zeitgeist Movement to say much right now, nor did we have much before this. But if people within the Zeitgeist Movement want to continue promoting the Venus Project, they can do that. We appreciate that, but don't mix up the material. For instance, if you have a brochure and you show our drawings and you take the information, the text from our website or whatever, then credit the Venus Project at the end. Put the Venus Project website there. Mention the source, but don't sign it the Zeitgeist Movement. For now, just keep all of that separate. If you have posters that have our pictures, then sign it the Venus Project, but not the Zeitgeist Movement. So this is a way that we're telling people who want to continue advocating the Venus Project within the activism of the Zeitgeist Movement that we're all for it, but just keep them separate as they're separate organizations. The Zeitgeist Movement is not the activist arm of the Venus Project now. So if you have any other ideas or suggestions or want to talk about it, we are open for it.
Let me say something about that. First of all, the Zeitgeist Movement did point out the shortcomings of our culture. They did point out the crimes by bank and Federal Reserve System. They did point out the confessions of economic hitman, which is very useful. But the Zeitgeist Movement never in its proposals laid out a system to take care of those problems. This is what I meant when I said we have nothing in common. We only have in common that this system today is very offensive. But if you don't come up with an alternative approach, you leave people in midair. It's the Venus Project that comes up with the educational system, the design of transportation, the design of cities, to use resources intelligently. All of the designs that have been proposed that may work very well for all people all over the world have not come up from the Zeitgeist Movement. That's all I'm talking about. The Zeitgeist Movement is a very definite stage in the development of people. They should learn what the shortcomings are of the free enterprise system and where it doesn't work. Where the Venus Project comes up with is what to do about it. Don't take my word for it. In other words, ask people of the Zeitgeist Movement, how do you prevent crime? What do you do about people that don't want to go along with the system? How do you design cities that work, and how do you know they'll work? What's the basis for your decision making? Just try asking them that, and you'll find out that they have no answers.
So question here, some of the Zeitgeist, it says some of the Z and the V concepts are outside the comfort zone of many people. So we must come up with multiple approaches to educate people about resource-based economy. This is fine. But if you come up with different approaches, swing it by us so we can see that you're really in line with what the Venus Project advocates for a resource-based economy. What's the difference between countries sharing resources in the transition and plain old barter? How do the two differ exactly? If you want to go over that?
In the barter system, you try to take advantage of a person by giving them less apples for bananas, or whatever advantage position you hold. The barter system does not have anything to do with a better distribution of resources. The Venus Project not only shares resources, but shares knowledge and shares architectural information, city planning, research findings. There's no patents in the Venus Project. We share ideas with everybody, but everybody is taken care of. There's no elitism of any kind, technical or otherwise.
I have a question.
Sure, go ahead.
There's a lot of talk about the world financial system collapsing, which of course everyone I think agrees that it's going to be very destructive. I would like to look for a way to see if we can bring it more to a soft landing. And I was wondering particularly if Jacques feels that that's just a waste of time, that it's inevitable that the system will collapse, or would it be worth spending time to try to figure out a way to make it come apart in a less disruptive way?
Well, as it collapses, it'll move toward military dictatorship.
He's saying, is there, sorry, I have to interpret this.
And you'll only accelerate that.
Because Jacques can't hear all the words. Do you think there's a way of making it kind of a soft landing? I think the only advantage or to making it easier is if we get the word out there to more people. The broader the amount of people that know about it, the less problems there'll be.
Thank you.
How do you see all the stuff that's happening in the eastern sector, in some parts of Europe, even in the US? There are more which are going on the street and demand that they want to change into a new system, into a system that benefits the people, and not a system that forces the people to benefit it, to work for it, sorry.
When the people protest all over the world and they want a new system and they don't know what that system is or how to operate it, they will have the same problems unless you specify the new system. Specify education, what it is you're going to teach people. And the more religion you have, the more new religions you have, the more problems you're going to have. And the more opinions you invite, the more problems, unless the opinions are based upon research and actually trying to figure out how things work. If you don't do that, you will always have problems.
From what I've seen, they're saying that they want a new system, but they really want to be heard more or more access. Or I've heard too in interviews of some of the leaders of the young people in Spain, for instance, is that they're saying they want a new system, but what that means to them is to have the politicians listen to what their needs are and more voice. So they really don't know enough to advocate something different. Unfortunately, not enough of them know about the Venus Project or a resource-based economy. So they don't know what to advocate. And they'll, like Jacques said, they'll get the same problems over and over again. They'll get the people who represent the monetary interests in there. Even if not immediately, it will gradually go towards that.
Makes sense. Thank you.
You know, a scientist wrote a book once. He suggested that don't ask people what they want. Tell them what they ought to want. People don't know enough about things to know what they really want. People think they want a job to get the money to buy the things they want. They don't want a job. They want access to things. A job is in the way. It's a pain in the ass. It's not pleasant at all. So why do you want a job? What you want is access to the things you want. And once you get that across to people and teach them what they ought to want, what they really want, they don't even know how to state the problem today. They're brought up without the language, without the knowledge of what to want. So they think they want a job. They don't want a job. They want access to things. Think about what I'm saying.
I have a question. Imagine we get to a resource-based economy and finally everything is automatized and you're no longer restrained by things like this society, so you can do anything you want. What would you do?
You don't have people brought up to do anything they want. They would be killing each other if they did anything they want. They have to do things that promote sustainability. That's what education means. Education means you show people, if you kill people and they come back and kill you, you can't without training people or educating them as to what will promote survival.
There'll never be a time where we arrived at the place in society, we've reached it. People will always have not so much problems, but they'll always have things that they want to solve. They'll always have, immediately, they'll always have problems. We have problems such as heart disease, cystic fibrosis, tsunamis, all sorts of things that people need to solve and need to work on. We'll never reach a state where we can sit back and say, we've made it. That would be death. So our values will be very different in the future, and what we work on is very different, and what we tackle and to conquer and to do would be very different. But there'll be always new challenges.
Well, I would think that the honest thing to say is that once we get all the problems, we become the state where we no longer have to worry about the food, about living anymore. We would be immortal biologically. Then what would concern us? I would say, well, no. For me, it's a mystery.
Can I say something?
Sure.
Jackie, I would like to say that the machines can act like us. They will get bored with repetitive work, and they also can have feelings. If we build these things with new electronic component called memristor, or if we base these robots in some kind of emulation of the human brain. They will behave exactly like a human being.
They don't get hungry. They don't get hungry. Machines don't care. Machines don't have ambition. They don't feel overworked. They don't feel anything. But you can generate machines to look like they feel. You can generate images of people that move and talk with great sympathy, but they will not feel. It's just like a movie actor. He acts like something, there's been a terrible earthquake and he lost his family, but it's only acting. A movie actor doesn't feel the loss of a family. Do you know what I mean? When he acts a part. The same with machines. They can simulate all kinds of conditions, but they do not feel. Machines do not have a reaction. If you work your computer Saturday, Sunday, Monday, it doesn't say, give me a break, give me a day off, will you bastard? You work me all the time. Machines don't feel, isn't that obvious?
I think what he meant was that exactly like you said it, if it's wanted that machines produce something that looks like a human feeling, for example, if you are in an automated restaurant and the automated waiter comes to you and she has to look like or if you want her to look like a girl, then she can behave like that through the modern technology. But if it's not wanted, if you have a crane and it has to pull a load up high in the air, it does not have to look like a human. And yeah, I think that sometimes people get confused by it. They see new technology and think that the system that can copy a human feeling already has this human feeling, but it's not that way. It's like, or of course it's like you said, they don't have feelings. And people sometimes mix it up because it looks like it, but it's not the case.
Yes, that's correct. We're going to have to go, sorry, but we'll continue this, I guess, next week then. We really appreciate all of you coming in to the TeamSpeak for this.
Yeah, brilliant. I'd just like to take this opportunity to thank you, Jack and Roxanne, for taking the time out to come and do this Q&A for everyone. We'll set up the next one for next week. Thanks everyone for coming.
Thank you. Yeah, thank you very much.